You are listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. My name is Tyler, and I am joined by my two friends, Amanda and Stephanie. We are a trio of coaches coming together to explore life's biggest topics. Each episode, we hold true to our name, Come As You Are, by showing up and going live. Whatever we bring to the table that week is what we talk about. No scripts, no planning, just real and raw conversations. And audience participation is always encouraged. Our mission is to create a space where vulnerability and authenticity take center stage, and we believe in the power of deep conversations and soulful connections. So welcome to the show. We're happy that you're here, and we invite you now to just sit back, relax, and enjoy today's conversation. Hi.
How's everybody doing?
Good. I could tell there was a full moon this week.
Yes.
How so?
I agree. What's it been like for you?
God, energy wise, I have felt so drained this week. Like I actually thought I was getting sick, and I don't think I am, but knock on wood. Because it was just like I was having like headaches, and I was like couldn't concentrate, and I was like, okay, there's like things happening in the world, like in the universe around us, that's like causing a lot of like just strong energy. And yeah, I felt like I ran a marathon this week.
Sounds like a week.
Yeah, it was a good week. There was nothing bad or any, but I was just like, wow, I'm really drained.
Yeah, definitely feeling that energy too. We waited up to like see it at its peak, and we did like, my son was like, he wanted to do this like moon ceremony, and like so we had like this whole thing. So I definitely felt felt the energy, especially because we were really intentional with it. My son is obsessed with astrology and just all of the things to do with the sky and space, and so I think it's super cool. It's so much fun, and oh my gosh, there's so many things to think about, to learn about, to know about, like, oh my gosh. And yeah, definitely feeling the energy though.
Also, every planet's like in retrograde, which
This is like huge.
it's huge. I mean, I shouldn't say every planet. Mars is not in retrograde, but Mars is also like the biggest planet. And so that like I watch like one of the YouTubers who does like all of the astrology readings and does tarot cards and stuff like that. And he was like, yeah, prepare for a week, y'all, because it's like all the planets are in retrograde. There's a super blue moon happening, and Mars is the only one that's moving, forward, and he's like, the energy is going to be real. And I was like, yep, I get it now. And I used to never really be like conscious of like astronomy and like what was happening in the planets and how it was like affecting tides and things like that. But it's a really interesting, and like I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with this today, but it's a really interesting study, like to know like how the planetary alignments and what it does to our tides and to the different vibrations. Like you can't deny the presence of like the planets and what's happening out there in space, like, and how it does affect, like, I mean, science can prove like it affects our tides in the oceans and stuff like that. So if it's affecting our tides in the ocean, it's definitely affecting like our energetic playing fields, like that we don't like the electromagnetic energy that's like all around us, like it affects that too. And so I used to be such a skeptic, and I'd be like, oh, those woo-woo astrology people who are all about like the moons and things like that. And now I'm like a full believer in that part of like the spiritual realm. And so
Yeah, well, when
yes,
you think if it affects the tides, right? If we're majority water, right?
that's a
Like
good
our
point.
as humans, our bodies are mostly water. Like if it affects the tides, it's got to affect us somehow. So yeah, no, I my dad was always really into astrology growing up, so I kind of had like the touch points, and then I fell into the rabbit hole and and I can't get out. I love it. How are you, Stephanie? How was your week?
My
You're
week
quiet
just
today.
got my week just got explained by the two of you because I've actually had a week of celebrating and sharing the joy and slowing down to really harvest the rewards of the last couple of months and year really of just looking back at my personal development and everything. And one thing that so I would say overall my energy was really great this week. But one thing that was interesting is that from Monday to Wednesday, or to yesterday actually, like so for 4 nights, I always woke up so early and I had really weird dreams. I mean, I always dream weirdly, like always, but the dreams were weird in a different way. Like I could just tell like my sleep wasn't that deep. And now that you're mentioning that it was full moon, I'm like, yeah, maybe it has to do with that. Because I'm not someone that necessarily watches what's going on out there interstellar, but sometimes when I'm wondering, oh, why couldn't I sleep? And someone mentions to me, oh yeah, it was full moon. I'm like, okay, maybe that's why. So that just, yeah, thank you for explaining that and uncovering the mystery. I'm sure it had to do with that. Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful, most beautiful example, right? Because even though you didn't know it, it was still happening. And so I think whether you're, super into astrology or not, it's still affecting you. It's still affecting you no matter what you do. So yeah, I think that's it's really interesting to think about, right? Like because sometimes I think that there's certain things in our lives that we this like your your thoughts kind of becoming reality, right? Like what you think becomes that reality. So if you're focused on something, on whether it's positive or negative, like, oh well, that's what's gonna happen, that's how it's gonna be. And there's certain things that I think that to me, and for the sake of our conversation today, I think like in saying that, yeah, like there are things where the moon and the planets and all those things, they do affect us. But I also think that sometimes we can have this skepticism because there's certain things in life that like, well, if I believe that, I don't know, trying to think of an example, like that something's bad, like, I don't know, that even, okay, if we're in this like ologies, let's talk like numerology, right? Like if number 4, just for an example, is bad, like anything with 4 is just bad. And so we could find all the reasons why, like there's certain events or things that happen around 4 that may have not been ideal. But then there's another person who says, well, 4 is my lucky number. All the greatest things happen with 4s. So I think that sometimes, the things that we focus on can sometimes like it it causes us to act or notice certain things in certain ways. But I think what you just like beautifully illustrated, Stephanie, was that this is something that's affecting you no matter what, whether you believe in it or not. Is there, it's happening, and it's real. And yeah, I just think that's really, really, really cool.
Well, and isn't this like the essence of manifestation?
Yep.
Like I mean, I really didn't want to go there, but I was just sitting here thinking about this, and I was like, okay, we like, you know, we have like our intention, we have our awareness, we have our beliefs, and we put them into something, and then the universe aligns in a way to reflect that, you know. And I like Amanda's example here of like the numbers. Like if you keep seeing a certain number, it's telling you something. And I mean, a lot of people will go through life and they'll just ignore it, and they'll keep ignoring it, and you know, they don't find like the spiritual space for that, or it becomes like too woo for them. Like I know, like I love woo, like I do. And but it to me, that's at the heart of manifestation, is like we have a belief and we sit with it, and we put it out there, and we keep like radiating this energy of like, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want, and it comes. And like, this is what's so powerful too, is like a lot of times we're so unaware of what we're believing, or what's constantly like circulating in our mind. This is why I believe like bad things happen to people, is because they have that, they're unaware of kind of where their mind's at, or where their thoughts are going, or what they're thinking. And the universe takes that and goes, okay, I'm going to deliver more of that. I'm going to deliver more of that. And I think, I don't know, I just think like when you, this is to me like the magic of the universe. This is to me is like what gets me really giddy, is like we're all like little magicians. We get to consciously create our reality, and then once we start to believe in something hard enough, it does start to you know like show up. And it's like that whole phenomenon of like, when you're thinking about your next dream car, and you go on Google and you look at the images, and then all of a sudden like you start to notice the car everywhere. you know those
Mhm.
cars have always been around. It's just that you are now consciously aware of how many of those cars are around. And it's like it's the same kind of like nothing has changed except your awareness, except for the fact that like, okay, I can see that now. I can see the connection. I can see how and I always have this saying, like, it's all connected. Everything, we are all connected as individuals. We are connected with, the living plants and the animals out there in the world, and the moons and the tides. Like, Amanda, you made a great point. We're like 70% water. Like, you think we're affected by tides? Probably, because we're 70% water. We're at least 70% affected by it, and it's like we can all just pretend that this stuff doesn't exist and keep kind of like living a miserable life, or we can be conscious creators and manifest a reality that we align with and we want to see out there in the world. And that's intense power, just like the energy from the full moon this week.
I love what you said, that we're magicians. In a sense, we really get to decide every single little piece of our lives, when we're intentional about it. And when you mentioned the car example, I always use my dog. So before I had a dog, I probably walked by 5 million dogs in my life, right? And I mean, yes, I always noticed some of them, I guess, but ever since I got a dog, every dog, right? I see every dog everywhere. And it doesn't matter whom I'm with. I always do this, like, oh, look, the dog there. I'm that person that always points out, oh, look, there's this cutie dog, and let's make a plan to distract the owner so I can steal it away. It's always like that. And you know what really blew my mind in this, like, understanding this whole concept of how it works, and that we really get to decide what we call into our lives, is that there's this idea that the universe doesn't understand negations. that means that when you say, I don't want to be broke, like anything that starts with, I don't want to, that's not a great way to manifest, because the universe, all it hears is that thing, right? Like, oh, brokenness. So it keeps showing you that you're broke, right? So instead, it's a conscious effort that we have to make of like, okay, if I don't want this, I've experienced being broke, not having a lot of money. So what do I want instead? And then making that effort and really sitting down and asking, okay, what is it that I do want? What does that abundant, wealthy, rich, whatever that looks like for you, life looks like? And then rather than saying, I don't want to be broke, saying like, okay, I want to have this life where I have this beautiful house with a garden, there's lots of space where my dog can roam around, or, whatever it is, or I want to have, I don't know, 5 cars in my garage, whatever it looks like for you, right? That it's about like making this conscious effort to get clear on what it is that you do want, versus trying to run away from the things that you don't want, because I guess then we just end up running somewhere where we also don't want to be, and we just keep bumping into stuff that we don't want. And when we finally turn it around to just saying what we do want, I think this is then, at least for me, when things started to really shift, and where I started to see the things that I actually wanted because I was more aware of them.
Yeah, like what you focus on grows, right? And I think what's really interesting about that too is most people, I think, and again, this is a very general statement, so I'm not going to assume that this is the truth for everyone. However, I'll say for the most part, the people that I've met, it's much easier to say, I don't want XYZ. Like a lot of people do this, right? Like, oh, I don't want that, or I don't want. But it's really interesting when we do shift to this, well, no, I want, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like most people that I've met have, well, not all the people, because I do meet a lot of coaches, and usually the coaches are like, oh, well, I want this and this and this, and they have like a manifestation list, they have a vision board, like, they have all of the things, they have a pretty good picture of what they do want. But I think, again, very generally speaking, it is easier to see the things that you don't want. Like something happens and it's like, oh, I don't want that challenge, or I don't want that hard thing in my life, or whatever. And to see the flip side where it's like, well, I want more joy, I want more like specific, even you were saying like the 5 cars or whatever it is, like we spend so much more time thinking of what we don't want instead of what we do want oftentimes. And I'm not saying this is like everyone. I wouldn't say I'm one of those people, because again, this like awareness, being conscious and intentional with these things. If I catch myself saying something like I don't want, I'm like, no, wait a minute. let's reframe that. I do want, and sometimes it is just the opposite, right? Like I don't want to be miserable like this anymore. And it's like, well, what I do want then is joy, right? Like it's sometimes that easy that it shifts to just be the opposite. I don't know why. I think this is like, now we're going into like the brain and how the brain's wired to notice more of the negative things. But I think that calling that out too, right? That this is human nature and it's okay that we do this. But when we're mindful of it, instead of just like mindlessly going through, and I think that's pretty much what we're talking about here, right? Like in just being mindful of your thoughts and how you want your life to be.
I would even, I would even throw out there too that want is one of the most damaging words that we can have in our vocabulary, because want is a reflection of scarcity.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
there's a lack in there.
There's like a lack in there versus, and this is something like I didn't just think of this. I've heard this from other like manifestation gurus, people, leaders in that industry. Like like they talk about want as it's a reflection of lack, and so it is a reflection of um scarcity. It's a scarce mindset to say I want more money, because you're essentially telling the universe like I lack money. And this idea of like shifting how we think from a scarce mindset. And this even goes back to like even what Amanda was saying about how as our brains we're conditioned to think of the negative. It's like programming where we're wanting to be safe. We're wanting to avoid danger. We're wanting, you know we want to remain in a safe zone. So of course we think kind of more in a negative space, because the negativity keeps us safe, the negativity keeps us small. And when we shift from saying things like I want more money, or I want better health, or I want a better job, to I desire to be wealthy, I desire to have an impactful job, I desire health, so much more affirming. It's much more like strong than saying I want, because one is needy. It's like graspy. It's like I gotta have it. And
Mhm.
desire is just opening yourself up with like wide open arms to be like, I desire riches, or I desire, you know, abundance. And it's like such a like opening from the chest to live from a place of desire versus a place of want. And that's just like taking it to the next level. So if you're going around first saying like I don't want this, reframe it to say I want this, and then change it to I desire, because that's going to let you live from a place of an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. And this topic, like the scarcity mindset, this week, for whatever reason, came up like so often this week. I talked to like several different clients this week around scarcity. And, everybody has like being a coach. And again, this is kind of a generalized statement, so take it for what it is. But a lot of coaches, and I work with them all week, they live from a place of scarcity, of competition, of everybody's so afraid that like, oh, if I share this, then another coach is going to come in and take my idea and make millions off of it. And I'm like, so like I used to live in that space of like that competition fear, like that scarcity mindset of, if I put myself out there and somebody steals my idea and then makes it, turns it into their own thing and then makes money off of it, they've cheated me and I've lost. And like that's such a scarce mindset to have. That's such like an insecure mindset to have. And I think when we shift from, living from a place of scarcity into a place of abundance, we recognize that like there are so many people out there in the world that could use the work that we're doing, that it doesn't matter if, you know, my friend over here takes this client or grabs this one or whatnot, because it's like I now have a belief that the people that are supposed to come to me come to me. It's not scarcity, it's not competition. It's just opening yourself up to attract what is naturally yours. This is how we make it easy. I think competition, I think scarcity, I think all of these like negatives that we live in make everything so much harder. And it is a lot easier to just stand there and say, you know what, I open myself up to receive what is mine, and then celebrate and, express gratitude for what you get, and then also what other people get, because there's so much to go around. And, I just, we like, competition kills. It kills the spirit, it kills the love, it kills the joy, and it's like I used to like, and I actually consider myself to be a very competitive person when it comes to like playing games and stupid things like that. But in life, I just don't think competition exists. I think like in success, I don't think competition exists. I think it really kills our spirit. It kills all of the beautiful things about life when we are stuck in a space of competition and scarcity.
This is such a great point, and I think this is another layer. When we are on social media, like I think you can really check yourself when you go on social media and you scroll through the coaches on there when you were a coach yourself, or you just on your personal Instagram account and you see your friends who are, on vacation and they just got engaged or they got a new puppy and all of that stuff. And you see that, and immediately you have this icky feeling inside of you, right? Like you kind of want to catch up, you want to know what's going on in their lives, or you want to be inspired by the mentors and the people you follow. But then also they give you this icky feeling. And I think this is what you were like talking about, Tyler, of this, like, it's kind of inflaming your competition. And this is just a matter of how do you look at it? Do you see yourself as separate from these people? Do you think that you are not what they are, maybe because they're just in a different situation, in a different point in their lives, and they have achieved something already that you want to achieve, but then you make it about you and you let your ego kind of take over and say, oh, they have this, they have the pool, they have the kid, they have the perfect holiday, they have the house, whatever, and I do not have that. And then it's immediately back to this, like, scarcity mindset. And I think this is why it's so important that when we are on social media or just anywhere in the world, that we do surround ourselves with the people and the things that just inspire us to think about ourselves and move forward. And I think I have this so often, honestly, especially on Instagram, where I have mentors or just people that I really like, and they're preaching exactly the stuff that I love to hear. But then, I have this icky feeling at some point. Like I'm starting to shift to this mentality of it just, doesn't ring right for me. Like they're not the people I need to hear it from. And then I just unfollow. They haven't done anything, right? This is nothing personal, nothing. It's just when my ego is being triggered so often, like why bother keep engaging, right? I don't have to make it so much harder for myself, right? I think that's something that we need to be just aware of all the time. Like how much when our ego is triggered, like don't entertain it, just be aware of it and then just move on, unfollow. It's just one click.
Can I just throw in, as you started talking, Stephanie, you reminded me of like the second C word, which is comparison. Competition and comparison are two words that will absolutely kill like your business, your goals, your joy. I mean, it robs you of all of the beautiful things in life when we are constantly in competition with others and constantly comparing ourselves to others. And so, that was, soon as you started talking, Stephanie, I was like, comparison. That was the other word that I couldn't get up, and I couldn't I just couldn't say it. So thank you for saying that, because as soon as you started talking, I was like, comparison, comparison, comparison.
It's really hard to multitask when we have those conversations, right? It's like your brain is busy talking about the story, sharing the story, and then there's this little part of our brains that is like busy rendering and thinking, okay, am I saying the right things? Like, what else do I want to add? Like, what else did he or she say? And then, it's like this. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
I do want to like go back to our like mindset shift thing that we kind of built up, where we started from like, okay, I don't want this, and shifted to I want that. And then Tyler, you added this, I desire that, right? And I actually want to add another layer there, and maybe there are even more, but this is a layer that I use also with my goals and whatever I manifest, is that I turn it into something that already exists. So when I say that, for example, I want to, or I don't want to live in a flat, right? And then I shifted into I want to live in a beautiful big countryside cottage house, right? And then I desire a countryside cottage house, and then I am, this is the next level, I am the owner of a cottage in the countryside. Like these I am statements when it comes to manifestation are so powerful. And this is not to create this illusion of like, oh, but obviously you don't have the country house yet. So it's like, why say the I am statement? But it's more about already being the person that owns that, and then making decisions from that identity, from someone that already has achieved or already is in the life situation that they would like to be in, that they desire right now. And then because you are a different person, right? Because if we were the person already that has the house, we would have it already. And so just putting ourselves in the shoes of who we are when we have that particular house just allows us to open us up even more to inviting all the things in. So I think after the desire state, we can move on to kind of like the I am statements. And I think for me right now is like the highest, the most powerful sentence I can come up with. But I don't know, maybe one day that we will add another layer. I don't know.
And I think there's so many layers to this, right? And maybe this isn't necessarily another layer, or it's kind of in the same field as like I am, because I feel like sometimes there's certain things that I am doesn't always fit the best. You know what I mean? Like, so I have like my list of 5,000 goals, and part of that is this, the I am statements, but I also have things that are like, I feel this way, or I understand, certain things about the world, or, for me, it's like, I understand that I can have a successful business and be a super supportive, involved, loving mother. Like, that understanding, like, yes, I am also that, but that I also understand it as well, I think adds a more like depth to it as well, especially because sometimes the I ams, they don't sit right yet. But if we can do like, I feel, maybe I speak, or I love certain things, other ones I have, I understand, or I see, right? I see what you see, just involving more words to really embody and empower ourselves to live into that space. And I think the more that we get comfortable with those things, because initially sometimes it can feel a bit like the imposter syndrome, like, oh no, like I'm not living in a cottage house, like what do you mean? Or I'm not confident. But I think that when we can call it out and say it, it means, this is for me, I think that if we recognize it as something, it's something that does live within us. It's there, it exists, it's a version of us. It's just we need to like move in to that version of ourselves, or embody that more. And I think when we can recognize those things in other people, and going back to this idea of, the comparison and really the competition, like those things that we do to other people, for me, I feel like when I can see that in somebody else, or when I can recognize somebody else doing something, or something that, oh, she looks so confident doing that, I wish I was that confident. Again, I feel like when we are recognizing traits or strengths in other people, it's because we possess them as well. And I think shifting from this comparison and competition is bringing us to, well, it's another C actually. It's celebration. So when we can celebrate others, like for me, when I see someone who is doing something that is, maybe future goals or future version of me, I celebrate them. And I look at this like, wow, if they can do that, that means that it's possible, and it's possible for me too. Not only for them, it's me too. It's not just them, right? So I would Yeah, that's what I would add to this conversation so far. But I'm loving this. This is like so healing. It's so empowering.
This is good, y'all. We're gonna look back on this and we're gonna like dissect this down into the steps, into the process, and we're gonna have like this whole episode is gonna be like how to change your life, because this is essentially what we're doing here is we're laying the pathway for identity change, you know? And everything that we've laid out here is, and I love that Amanda was talking about this idea of embodiment, you know, we start by changing our thoughts. We start by changing the language that we use to describe things. We then put it into those affirmations of like I am, because that's now starting to attach to the identity. And then we drill inwards. And I love the language of like I feel, you know, I understand this. I would say another one is I believe, you know,
Mm.
it's going into that belief space of what do I believe? What do I hold true about myself, about others, and about the universe that I can like attach in here, you know, into my inner beingness. And this is what this whole conversation is all about, which is being. How am I being? How am I choosing to show up in the world to be? You know, do I want to be competitive? Do I want to be, you know, like plagued by comparisons and scarcity, or do I want to be compassionate? Do I want to be, celebrating? Do I want to be abundant? You know, I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a choice that we make, that we then, as we're now discussing here, like constantly having to affirm and remind ourselves, you know? And so it's this like whole beautiful like habit loop of, like beliefs, like changing our identity is kind of like a habit, you know? We have to work up, this like this muscle of, building the beliefs, building our identity, just like going to the gym. Again, we're going back to the whole mind gym that we talked about, I think it was last week. And this idea of like this work is intentional, it's conscious, it is, you're curating, new identities, new beliefs inside of you, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I was actually talking to a client earlier this week about affirmations, and she had a great point. She goes, are affirmations kind of like toxic positivity? And I was like, interesting. Let's talk about this. Like I had a great conversation with her about this. And I remember the first time I ever did affirmations, I was like, well, this is quacky. Like that was literally like, and I'm sure we all had that experience where we were like, well, this is silly. What are we doing here? Like, I am loved and I am worthy. And, when you first start that work, it doesn't feel connected. It doesn't feel like there's, as Amanda was saying, there is that disconnect initially because we don't have the belief, you know? And so it's like you got to ask yourself, like, what has to change in order for me to believe that I am loved, that I am worthy, that I am healthy, that I am living in the countryside cottage of my dreams? Like, what has to change within you? It's not outside, it's not with people around you, it's within you, you know? And it's, y'all, when you really take the time to do this deeper work, to spend some time focusing on your inner beingness and your inner identity, that's where the true magic happens. That's where the true transformations come from. It is an internal process, and your inner makeup is going to mirror your external world, you know? So if you don't like something externally, like if you're not completely, satisfied with anything externally, ask yourself what has to change internally in order for me to fix that or to change that. And it's that, I think, to me, like coming back to this funky week that we're having and like that I was having, I think anytime there's like a full moon or anytime there's something happening like in the astronomy space world, like it's always a good reflection point to go, okay, let's take a time to reflect, to look back, to see, where I need to change, because we're never finished. Like the work that we do on ourselves doesn't change. And I was reflecting on that this week and I was like, Tyler, you've come so far. You've done all of these amazing things. You've completely changed, how you look at yourself in the mirror and how you feel about yourself. And it's all there. And also, okay, here are some other areas in my life that I am wanting to work on and to improve upon. And, you know, and what was different was like for the first time I was looking at this going, I want to do this out of a place of love versus a place of like competition and comparison. So that was, I think, why competition and comparison was so on my mind this week, because after doing all of the inner work to build my belief and to build my self-worth and to build love for myself, I can now make these changes from a deeply rooted sense of like security inside of myself versus the insecurity of like comparing myself to others. And that feels really affirming. That feels really good. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but like I guess my point is it takes a long, long time to get here, to get to the level of security and safety within yourself, to like be able to let go of the competition and the comparison.
I'm glad you landed there, Tyler, because in my mind I was thinking like I'm imagining watching us right? Like somebody watching the like, because we are really like we're just having such a casual conversation, which is what we always do anyway. But you know what I mean? Like it's just so like, yeah, like it's so easy. Just I am love, I am, and we're like doing all of this and saying all these things like as if it's just something that is so like we're almost oversimplifying it, but not at the same time, because it truly is that simple. However, it's important to note that it is work. It does take time. And it's like you mentioned, Tyler, it's an ever evolving journey, right? Like, because once we get to one place where we want to be or desire, then there's something else. Like there's another level, or there's certain things where, I've worked on this and now that's kind of dealt with. And now there's this new thing that comes up. And so it's a constant evolution. So I just want to mention that because I don't want anyone who's listening to get super discouraged, because we are making this sound as I'm like having a moment of just like dissociation. I'm listening to us. I'm like, this is sounding way too easy. I'm like, why didn't I do this when I was a teenager? Like, so I just want to say, like, be kind to yourself, right? Be patient, give yourself space and grace, and know that all of us, the three of us here, I mean, I wouldn't say, and I'll speak for myself in this space, that like, I wouldn't think I'm, the most enlightened being in the world. Like I still have work to do, but I'm getting there. And each day, we work at it, and it's the 1%. It's the 1% that we do each day that is adding up over time. And so now, after all the years that the three of us have really been working towards our personal growth and personal development, we've gotten better. I'm not going to say that, and maybe I could speak for myself here, not perfect, but I almost don't know if that's like even really something that's entirely realistic, right? Because for me, I always want to keep growing. And then this like idea of perfection also puts us in this like comparison or the competition space. So I think that as long as we're mindful of our beingness and how we're showing up in the world and our internal landscape, this is an internal game, right? This is what we've mentioned. It's very internal. So it's a personal journey. Your journey isn't going to look like somebody else's. Even if you relate to one of the three of us, your journey is still going to be different than ours. It's not going to be the same. It's just not. Even the three of us, we all have, yes, similarities, and it's all led us to this place, but we're all different at the same time, right? So be kind to yourself. I really, really want to stress that, because I don't want this to seem like, oh, well, you guys are making it sound so easy. Why can't I do that? I want this to be something that everyone watching walks away from feeling inspired and empowered and motivated to move forward towards that 1%. It's not going to be 100% overnight. Like, just that 1%, step by step, little small incremental things. And actually, the smaller that it is, the easier it becomes, because you're not trying to just do this like, oh, well, I'm going to change everything about like everything all at once. Like, what? It's like, imagine you had like, I don't know, like I don't eat steak, so I'm trying to think of like, what's a big steak? Like, is 8 ounces, is that a 12-ounce steak, a 20-ounce steak? I don't know. Like,
I mean, in Texas, like we're talking like 24 ounces.
Okay, so 24-ounce steak
36.
here. We're not just gonna like eat it all in one bite. Like, we gotta take it bit by bit, and we gotta eat it slowly, right? So if that analogy can give you any bit of hope or encouragement, because we have really like brought this down to like super simple and just making it sound like, oh yeah, it's just like a walk in the park. Yeah, I could eat a 24-ounce steak in one bite.
Can I add
Oh,
on
Tyler.
to it? Because this is such a good point to make. And I love, Amanda, you went with a steak reference. And I mean, Texas, like, we're known for steaks. We're known for like big meat, which is like funny to say. Like, there's actually a place in Texas, like, side thing here, side thought. There's the Big Steak Challenge out in like West Texas. It's 72 ounces. If you finish a 72-ounce steak, and then it's like a baked potato and a side salad and a roll. If you finish all of that within like an hour, you get the meal for free. It's ridiculous. Nobody should ever eat 72 ounces of steak in one sitting, ever. And I think this is a good point. I mean, crazy analogy using steak as like the reference point here, but like, you're not going to tackle the big steak in one sitting, you know? And this idea of small steps, small changes. And I think this is at the heart of what it all has become for us, is like, when we look back, I mean, my journey is now going into like year 13 of like actually being committed to the personal development path. 13 years worth of small steps, and they weren't every day, and it wasn't consistent, and it wasn't perfect, and it, you know, and I think this is like that. We got to break that mentality that there is like a goal or a destination or something that we're like, you know, like reaching for, because as soon as you get there, like, the next level unlocks, and it's almost like a game. It's almost like a video game. It's like you complete the level and then you go to the next one, and it's never ending, you know? And I think we look at like the big life changes that we want to have, and we try to sit down and we try to eat all 72 ounces of the life changes in one sitting. That's impossible for like most people. Like, very few people have actually like accomplished the 72-hour steak challenge, or the 72-ounce steak challenge, because it's too much, you know? And I think this is where we get into that like space of, you know, giving yourself, my one of my favorite phrases is give yourself space and grace. You know, give yourself space to take the time to do the, you know, to do the change work, and then give yourself grace when it doesn't go as planned or as quickly or whatever your expectations were. Like, give yourself the grace to, you know, be compassionate, to be kind, to be forgiving for yourself, because you have to be your own like cheerleader, your own BFF, your own, you know, support system when you're going down this journey, because it is so unique to you and nobody else is walking the same path as you. And yes, you can be in a community of like-minded people who are also growth-minded and all of these types of things, but this is your journey. This is your path. This is your this is your space, you know. And so it's unique to every single one of us, and everybody's timeline is so different, you know. And I think that is just so important to be reminded of here as we, I think we're coming to an end here. But Stephanie, I know you have like lots of things to say because I could see it in your face.
I really love the video game analogy. It's perfect. I use that so often. And you know, in life, like we cannot, our life is a video game, really. And we have all these quests and all these stages to go through that there's one thing we cannot dictate, and that's the time, right? Like we cannot force the process, because we need to do all those little side quests, because otherwise probably we don't have this larger energy level to be able to, you know, go on and take a challenge on that requires us to take a lot of hits, right? Then, because otherwise we would be, you know, dead in the game right away. So I think just coming to this place and making peace with the fact that there is such a thing as divine timing, and trusting that, like, that is already such a huge milestone. And as Amanda was also sharing earlier, I was just thinking of, you know, you were saying like, I want people to be inspired by this and motivated. And I sat there, I was like, I'm inspired, I'm motivated. Like everything we shared today, like I've heard this so often in my life already in so many ways on my own personal development journey, but somehow, you know, the way we shared this here today, I am super pumped right now. I'm super pumped. And I was just thinking about the beginning of my own journey of when I first started to, you know, hire a coach and everything, that I just remember this super heavy feeling of overwhelm and being so afraid that I would never be able to measure up. I would never be able to make it. I would never, whatever it was, right? Like I didn't even know what this mountain of fear that I had in front of me was. It was probably just empty. It was nothing, but just the imagination I had of I would never get to this place where I would be happy and content and at peace with myself. And just having all of this overwhelm, I just want to say that probably when you start and when you're in the beginning and you haven't done much manifestation work, it can be this big mountain. It can feel like, oh, it's gonna be so hard. Oh, I have to, you know, find some energy somewhere inside of me every day that I don't have right now because I'm so drained from life every day, to do manifestation, right? To make a conscious effort. And to all of you who are maybe in this space to some extent, I just want you to know that this overwhelm, this big huge stone that's sitting on your chest, or whatever it feels like for you, maybe it's an elephant, I don't know, that it will evaporize. Like it won't always be there. There will be this one point, you know, Tyler, you said this so beautifully, be your own cheerleader, be your own best friend, where you just are so in alignment with who you are, with your beliefs, with what you believe about life and the world and everyone in it, that it will set you free and it will give you these beautiful wings, and then you can just fly to the top of any mountain.
So go, everybody, sprout your wings. And we'll come back here same time, same place next week, and we'll be holding space for this evolution to just actualize for you. So thank you all so much for watching. or listening wherever you are. We'll see you all next time. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram at Kaya the Podcast and on YouTube and Facebook by searching Kaya the Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please help us keep the conversations going by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And be sure to join us next time for another